Welcome to the Missouri Poetry Out Loud contest. I'm Laura Brewer Ackerman, and I'll be your MC for today's event. I'm happy to see all of you here, and particularly happy to see the 10 students here representing our regions in the state. Many of us here are students. I would argue all of us. Many of us here are teachers. Many of us here are lovers of language. And as I prepared for today, I thought about what brings all of us here. And a friend of mine asked if I'd seen the new iPad Air commercial. And I don't watch very much TV, not because of any sanctimonious reason, I just don't have time to. So I hadn't seen it, and she played me a YouTube video of the commercial. And it uses the voice of Robin Williams narrating the commercial, speaking lines from Dead Poets Society, where he played John Keating. And he says this: "We don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we are members of the human race. And the human race is filled with passion. And medicine, law, business, engineering, these are the noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for." And then the voiceover goes on to quote Whitman, describing the masses of people around of us, many of us flawed and faithless, and asks, "What good amid these, O me, O life?" Answer, that you are here, that life exists, and identity. And the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. That the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. What will your verse be? So I feel like we're here today because there are verses we need to contribute. Literature inspires us to contribute our own verses, and these students' voices are part of that collective verse. I'm an educator, and I know firsthand the power of words, particularly the power of words from a page and into a student's heart to be spoken and shared. The powerful play goes on, and we teachers are able to celebrate the poet, the author, the playwright at times like that in our classroom, at times like this. On days like today, we're reminded that language and words and the love of learning matters, and that can be celebrated. A lot of learning happened to get us to where we are today. This is the 9th Missouri Poetry Out Loud contest. The National Endowment for the Arts and the Poetry Foundation have partnered with state arts agencies in the United States to support the expansion of this project, encouraging our nation's youth to experience great poetry through memorization and performance. Poetry Out Loud helps students master public speaking skills, build self-confidence, and learn about their literary heritage. The Missouri Arts Council sponsors this program for us in Missouri. We're proud of the students and the teachers who participated in this project this year in Missouri. Nearly 6,000 students in Missouri alone had a Poetry Out Loud experience. And here are the top 10. I hope you'll find this day to be an example of what's good in schools, in classrooms, in learning in Missouri. We all get to contribute a little bit of a verse to that powerful play that goes on today, and we get to do that very soon. Before the program begins, we have a short bit of remarks with a few people who are important to this effort.
Good morning. I'm going to keep my remarks brief. I saw most of you last night, but I'd like to welcome all of you here, both the performers and the audience. It's a great audience this year, and that makes a difference to a performer. I would also like to congratulate all of the contestants here on what you've achieved already. And you need to concentrate on that. It is the journey. It is not the end that you're looking at. Thank you.
Good morning, and congratulations to everyone that's here. Some of you are thinking, why is this related to economic development? Because most of what I'm involved in is recruiting companies to come to Missouri or expanding companies. Well, it's because the quality of life of a community is directly related to recruiting high caliber companies. Because the #1 criteria for a company looking at a community is the ability to attract and retain top level talent. And what does talent want? They want to live in a community that's great to live. And what is one of the key components of a great place to live? The arts. So congratulations to you all, and keep it up, and I look forward to this. Thank you very much.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here and to see what's going on with young people in poetry. As you may know, the audience for poetry in America is rather small in comparison to other countries, and there's been a lot of worry about this, and in the last 20 years I think some very effective attempts to widen the audience for poetry. Garrison Keillor's Writer's Almanac, Ted Kooser has syndicated poems in about 150 American newspapers now, and I think that this program falls with those attempts to widen and deepen the audience for poetry. I think this is a very important activity that we're looking at here for a couple of reasons. One of them is that it involves young people. I think if you're going to get more people in America reading and enjoying poetry, you're going to have to start with young people. And this program, it seems to me, is a very effective way of getting young people involved in poetry. Poetry is more like music than prose, and it's more like music because poets tend to concentrate more on sound and rhythm and language than writers of prose do, and as a result of that, poetry lends itself to performance, I think, better, and that's what's being done here. It seems to me that memorizing a poem allows you to appreciate it in perhaps the deepest kind of way, and allows that poem to take you not only intellectually and emotionally, but physically, because sound and rhythm are physical elements. So what you're looking at here is something you should pay a lot of attention to. This is a very important activity we're doing, and I congratulate the people who are here, the 10 finalists, for coming here today. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Malia Franklin. I am the Director of English Language Arts for the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and I am honored to be part of your Poetry Out Loud experience. Thank you. Actually, my speech was to be a great deal longer than it was, but then Laura spoke, and then Nola spoke, and it's gotten quite a bit shorter. I don't need to tell you about the foundation of this poetry program and where it started, but I do have a couple of things that I would like to say to the students and the parents both. Students, I would like for you to think for a moment about the skills that you've mastered on this voyage. You are now masterful public speakers. You have built self-confidence, and not to mention those trivial skills that old lady English teachers like myself like to focus on. Reading, writing, listening, speaking, you know, those crazy learning expectations that your teachers and parents are so concerned with. But I would like for you to reflect for a moment about the journey that you've been on that's brought you to this point. Let's see, you started out by reading, or you browsed what literally piles of poems. You read and recited 10, 20, 50 different poems. Ultimately, you selected a poem with which you personally connected, not one that you thought would be the easiest to memorize, right? So look what's happened. Working day after day, you have internalized an author's message, and you'll share that message with us today. And I personally cannot wait to hear your interpretation. So for parents and teachers and our other honored attendees, the support that you provided our young people is absolutely immeasurable, and you have every right to be button-popping proud. These young men and women represent us with aplomb. So I'll end with a hackneyed cliche that I mean absolutely from the bottom of my heart. Best wishes to you all, and no matter the outcome, what you take away from Poetry Out Loud makes you all winners. Thank you.
We'll talk quickly about what will happen at the competition today. Each student has prepared 3 poems. The poems are from the official anthology of over 600 poems at Poetry Out Loud. The students have chosen their poems to demonstrate their ability to memorize, analyze, interpret, and recite poets' works. What will happen is each student will introduce his or her poem and then present the piece. And we will see everyone's first poem and everyone's second poem. Then we will have a short break. Then we will see everyone's third poem. And now, if the judges are ready, and I know the students are ready, I think we should begin. Our first contestant became interested in Poetry Out Loud when her 8th grade English teacher, Mrs. Ernst, showed a video of the national competition. From then on, she knew she wanted to participate in high school, and she's competed for the last 4 years. Here's Missouri's Central Regional Champion from Rockbridge High School, Sarah Ashbaugh.
Poor Angels by Edward Hirsch. At this hour, the soul floats weightlessly through the city streets, speechless and invisible, astonished by the smoky blend of grays and golds seeping out of the air, the dark half-tones of dusk suddenly filling the urban sky, while the body sits listlessly by the window, sullen and heavy, too exhausted to move, too weary to stand up or to lie down. At this hour, the soul is like a yellow wing slipping through the treetops, a little ecstatic cloud hovering over the sidewalks, calling out to the approaching night, "Amaze me, amaze me." While the body sits glumly by the window, listening to the clear summons of the dead. Transparent as glass, clairvoyant as crystal. Some nights it is almost ready to join them. Oh, this is a strange, unlikely tethering, a furious grafting of the quick and the slow. When the soul flies up, the body sinks down, and all night, locked in the same cramped room, they go on quarreling, stubbornly threatening to leave each other, wordlessly filling the air with the sound of a low internal burning. How long can this bewildering marriage last? At midnight, the soul dreams of a small fire, of stars flaming on the other side of the sky. But the body stares into an empty night sheen, a hollow-eyed darkness. Poor, luckless angels, feverish old loves, don't separate yet. Let what rises live with what descends.
For the state and national finals, students are required to recite at least one poem that was written before the 20th century, and one that is 25 lines or fewer. In some cases, one poem can satisfy both requirements. Students may choose any poem within the contest anthology, and they determine the order of their selections for recitation. Inevitably, teachers, classmates, friends, and family members gain exposure to some familiar poems and some new poems as well through hearing that rehearsal process. Next is the Kansas City North Regional Champion from Kansas City Academy, Kyle McDonald.
And Death Shall Have No Dominion by Dylan Thomas. And death shall have no dominion. Dead men naked, they shall be one, with the man in the wind and the west moon. When their bones are picked clean, and clean bones gone, they shall have stars at elbow and foot. Though they go mad, they shall be sane. Though they sink through the sea, they shall rise again. Though lovers be lost, love shall not, and death shall have no dominion. And death shall have no dominion. Under the windings of the sea, they lying long shall not die winely. Twisting on racks when sinews give way, strapped to a wheel, yet they shall not break. Faith in their hands shall snap in two, and the unicorn evils run them through. Split all ends up, they shan't crack, and death shall have no dominion. And death shall have no dominion. No more may gulls cry at their ears, or waves break loud on the seashore. Where blew a flower, may a flower no more lift its head to the blows of the rain. Though they be mad and dead as nails, heads of the characters hammer through daisies. Break in the sun till the sun breaks down, and death shall have no dominion.
In these interim moments between poetry recitations, I'll be sharing some information that the students have provided me or some information that lets you know a little bit more about the program. Obviously, this gives you a rounder experience for today, but it also gives our judges a chance to complete their ballots. So that's kind of the nature of these little interludes. Our next competitor states, "For me, Poetry Out Loud began as an activity in English class. However, ever since I truly connected with my first poem, Caged Bird by Maya Angelou, it has become much more. I'm so grateful that my school and my teachers provide the opportunity and the support to participate in this event." We are very glad to. Our next competitor is the Kansas City South Regional Champion from Notre Dame de Sion High School. She is Alyssa Moncure.
Aria by David Barber. What if it were possible to vanquish all this shame with a wash of varnish, instead of wishing the stain would vanish? What if you gave it a glossy finish? What if there were a way to burnish all this foolishness, all the anguish? What if you gave yourself leave to ravish all these ravages with famished relish? What if this were your way to flourish? What if the self you love to punish, knavish, peevish, wolfish, sheepish, were all slicked up in something lavish? Why so squeamish? Why make a fetish out of everything you must relinquish? Why not embellish what you can't abolish? What will be left if you couldn't brandish all the slavishness you failed to banish? What would you be without this gibberish? What if the true worth of the varnish were to replenish your resolve to vanquish every vain wish before you vanish?
I'm going to guess that you're probably already impressed with the confidence and composure of these young people. This next student has been competing in this activity since her sophomore year, and it has continued through this, her senior year. She says, "Participating in Poetry Out Loud has benefited me. I have really bad stage fright at times, and this helped me overcome my fear of talking in front of large groups." She has a favorite quote, which is actually a favorite quote of mine too. "Speak the truth, even if your voice shakes." Here is the Northeast Missouri Regional Champion from Troy Buchanan High School, Allie Walker.
A Song in the Front Yard by Gwendolyn Brooks. I've stayed in the front yard all my life. I want a peek at the back, where it's rough and untended and hungry weed grows. A girl gets sick of a rose. I want to go in the backyard now, and maybe down the alley to where the charity children play. I want a good time today. They do some wonderful things. They have some wonderful fun. My mother sneers, but I say it's fine how they don't have to go in at 8:45. My mother, she tells me Johnny May will grow up to be a bad woman, that George will be taken to jail sooner or late on account of last winter he sold our back gate. But I say it's fine. Honest, I do. And I'd like to be a bad woman too, and wear the brave stockings of night black lace, and strut down the streets with paint on my face.
Our next competitor has a sister who competed in Poetry Out Loud previously, and he became interested at that time. He believes memorizing poetry helps one connect more with the poem rather than just studying it from the page. He approaches memorization one stanza at a time, repeating it out loud and continuing on to the next. To show us proof of that process is the Northwest Regional Champion, a homeschooled student from St. Joseph, Alex Hall.
Numbers by Mary Cornish. I like the generosity of numbers. The way, for example, they are willing to count anything or anyone. 2 pickles, 1 door to the room, 8 dancers dressed as swans. I like the domesticity of addition. Add 2 cups of milk and stir. The sense of plenty. 6 plums on the ground, 3 more falling from the tree. And multiplication's school of fish times fish, whose silver bodies breed beneath the shadow of a boat. Even subtraction is never lost, just addition somewhere else. 5 sparrows, take away 2, the 2 in someone else's garden now. There's an amplitude to long division, as it opens Chinese takeout, box by paper box, inside every folded cookie, a new fortune. And I never fail to be surprised by the gift of an odd remainder, footloose at the end. 47 divided by 11 equals 4, with 3 remaining. 3 boys beyond their mother's call, 2 Italians off to the sea, 1 a sock that isn't anywhere you look.
Our next student indicates the first thing she does when tackling a poem is to think of the author. She says, I wonder whether she sat at her typewriter one morning with the intention of writing this specific poem, or if the words simply came to her as she was unloading groceries on a Friday afternoon. Mostly, though, I asked myself why this author wrote this poem. And in discovering the author's intent, I hope to realize why the poem speaks profoundly to me.
Cartoon Physics, Part 1, by Nick Flynn. Children under, say, 10 shouldn't know that the universe is ever expanding, inexorably pushing into the vacuum, galaxies swallowed by galaxies, whole solar systems collapsing. All of it acted out in silence. At 10, we are still learning the rules of cartoon animation. That if a man draws a door on a rock, only he can pass through it. Anyone else who tries will crash into the rock. 10-year-olds should stick with burning houses, car wrecks, ships going down, earthbound, tangible disasters, arenas where they can be heroes. You can run back into a burning house. Sinking ships have lifeboats. The trucks will come with their ladders. If you jump, you will be saved. A child places her hand on the roof of a school bus and drives across a city of sand. She knows the exact spot it will skid, at which point the bridge will give, who will swim to safety, and who will be pulled under by sharks. She will learn that if a man runs off the edge of a cliff, he will not fall until he notices his mistake.
For the student you're about to hear, poetry has played a large role in his life. Starting with nursery rhymes from his mom to limericks from his dad, he says poetry was all around him. Later in life, he enjoyed listening to reflective lyrics of songs and now enjoys all forms of poetry. He says the contest has increased his love of language. The Southwest Regional Champion from Stockton High School is Enoch Bradshaw.
Invictus by William Ernest Henley. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
Reciting Shakespeare, performing a symphony, singing the villain, or editing a scene, our next performer indicates he tries to convey truth in story. When you connect with people like that, the payoff is huge, he says. When the evil queen falls to her death from the stormy crag, the truth is permanently imprinted. When your story connects with an audience, truth echoes through the generations and across cultures.
The Way It Sometimes Is by Henry Taylor. At times, it is like watching a face you have just met, trying to decide who it reminds you of. No one, surely, whom you've ever hated or loved. But yes, somebody. Somebody. You watch the face as it turns and nods, showing you at certain angles a curve of the lips or a lift of the eyebrow that is exactly right. And still the lost face eludes you. Now this face is talking, and you hear a sound in the voice, the accent on certain words. Yes, a phrase. You barely recall sitting outside by a pool or a campfire, remarking a peculiar, recurring expression. 2 syllables, wasn't it? Doorknob? Bathroom? Shawcross. What the hell kind of word is Shawcross? Oh, a name. Not the right one. A couple of syllables that could possibly be a little like something you may once have heard. So the talk drifts, and you drift, sneaking glances, pounding your brain. Days later, a face occurs to you, and yes, there is a resemblance. That odd word, though, or phrase is gone. It must have been somebody else. Yes, it's like that at times. Something is maybe, and there are days when you can almost say what it is.
You know, Malia mentioned students not picking the easiest poem they could possibly memorize. I'm kind of thinking by the time you get to the top 10, you haven't picked the easy ones. These are not simple poems at all in the length of memorization or even in the depth of their content. Poetry plays an important role for our next performer as well. She writes music and lyrics and has also written poetry for school assignments and projects. She says this competition has opened her up and made her feel more comfortable with performing in front of groups of people. Now that she's used to it, she says performing is practically second nature. This is the St. Louis City Regional Champion from Crossroads College Prep School, Essence Imani Lee.
Duende by Tracy K. Smith. The earth is dry, and they live wanting, each with a small reservoir of furious music heavy in the throat. They drag it out, and with nails in their feet, coax the night into being. Brief believing, a skirt shimmering with sequins and lies. And in this night that is not night, each word is a wish, each phrase a shape their bodies ache to fill. I'm going to braid my hair, braid many colors into my hair. I'll put a long braid in my hair and write your name there. They defy gravity to feel tugged back. The clatter, the mad slap of landing. And not just them, not just the ramshackle family, the Theos, Promitos, not just the Balayard whose heels have notched and hammered time so the hours flow in place like a tin river, marking only what once was. Not just the voices scraping against the river, nor the hands nudging them farther, fingers like blind birds, palms empty, echoing. Not just the women with sober faces and flowers in their hair, the ones who dance as though they're burying memory one last time beneath them. And I hate to do it here, to set myself heavily beside them, not now for what they've proven the body a myth, parable for not what even language moves quickly enough to name. If I call it pain and try to touch it with my hands, my own life, it lies still and the music thins, a pulse felt for through garments. If I lean into the desire it starts from, if I lean unbuttoned into the blow of loss after loss, love tossed into the ecstatic void, It carries me with it farther, to chords that stretch and bend like light through colored glass. But it races on towards shadows where the world I know and the world I fear threaten to meet. There is always a road, the sea, dark hair, dolor. Always a question bigger than itself. They say you're leaving Monday. Why can't you leave on Tuesday?
One line that speaks to this next student most of all of the works he's prepared happens to be in this first poem. And he believes the speaker in the poem tells us to accept things with their imperfections because that's what makes them perfect. When things didn't turn out perfectly for him this year with a sport, this student said he just fell into his poetry and kept his eyes on what was really important. This is the St. Louis County Regional Champion from Afton High School, Sam Pointer.
Hysteria by Dionisio D. Martinez for Ana Menendez. It only takes one night with the wind on its knees to imagine Carl Sandburg unfolding a map of Chicago, puzzled, then walking the wrong way. The lines on his face are hard to read. I alternate between the TV, where a plastic surgeon is claiming that every facial expression causes wrinkles, and the newspaper. I picture the surgeon reading the lines on Sandburg's face, lines that would have made more sense if the poet had been, say, a tree growing in a wind orchard. Maybe he simply smiled too much. I'm reading about the All-Star game thinking that maybe Sandburg saw the White Sox of 1919. I love American newspapers, the way each section is folded independently and believes it owns the world. There's this brief item in the international pages. The Chinese government has posted signs in Tiananmen Square forbidding laughter. I'm sure the plastic surgeon would approve. He'd say, the Chinese will look young much longer. Their faces unnaturally smooth. But what I see, although no photograph accompanies the story, is laughter bursting inside them. I go back to the sports section and a close-up of a rookie in mid-swing, his face keeping all the wrong emotions in check. When I read, I bite my lower lip, a habit the plastic surgeon would probably call cosmetic heresy because it accelerates the aging process. I think of Carl Sandburg and the White Sox. I think of wind in Tiananmen Square, how a country deprived of laughter ages invisibly. I think of the great walls of North America, each of them a grip on some outfield like a rookie's hands around a bat when the wind is against him. I bite my lower lip again. I want to learn to think in American, to believe that a headline is a fact and all stories are suspect.
That's the end of round 1, and soon we will be moving directly to round 2. The judges have recorded and submitted their scores for each of the recitations in the first round, and those will be added to the scores for the next 2 rounds to determine our state champion.